Alexander Kane stood beneath the glow of his golden chandelier, but his mind was darker than ever. The storm with Richard had passed, yet the silence in his mansion felt heavier, like the calm before another disaster. Elena wept in the corner, her emerald gown clinging to her trembling frame, her sobs echoing against the marble walls. But Alexander's sharp eyes caught something strange. Those weren't the tears of guilt. They were the tears of fear. He had seen guilt before, in business rivals caught stealing, in board members exposed for lies, but this was different. Elena's tears seemed rehearsed, almost calculated, as if she were mourning something greater than the collapse of her affair. Alexander tilted his glass of brandy, studying her carefully, every movement recorded in his mind. His instincts told him something terrifying. Richard was not the real threat. For years, Alexander had pretended to be blind, tricking the world, his enemies, and even his wife. But now he wondered if Elena had been playing her own game all along. Could it be that the woman he loved, the woman he protected, had been guarding a secret far deadlier than Richard's betrayal? The thought struck him like a knife. Memories began to resurface. Elena's frequent late-night calls, the times she disappeared without explanation, the moments she seemed distracted during family dinners. At first he had chalked it up to boredom or maybe even guilt from her affair. But what if those moments were something else entirely? What if they were signs of a larger deception he had been too blinded by love to see? Alexander swirled the amber liquid in his glass, keeping his voice calm but deliberate. "Tell me, Elena, why do your tears sound more like fear than shame?" Elena froze. Her eyes widened, lips trembling, but no words came out. She quickly wiped her tears and turned away, her long black hair cascading down her back like a curtain of secrets. Alexander's pulse quickened. He had spent years building his empire, fighting men who hid daggers behind handshakes. But betrayal from inside his own mansion, from the woman he once trusted most, was a battlefield unlike any other. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, as his suspicion grew sharper than any blade. Richard had been a distraction, a pawn. But Elena? Elena might be the queen on the board, and queens he knew were the most dangerous pieces of all. Why was Elena truly afraid? How deep did her betrayal run? And what deadly secret was she hiding behind those trembling tears? The night stretched long inside the Kane mansion. The rain tapped softly against the tall glass windows, but Alexander wasn't listening to the storm, he was listening to Elena's footsteps. Every step she took echoed in the marble hallways like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Earlier that evening, after his probing question about her tears, Elena had quickly excused herself, muttering something about needing space. But Alexander knew better. Space, in the language of liars, meant opportunity. An opportunity for Elena meant another chance to hide. He waited patiently in his study, sipping his brandy, the glow of the fireplace painting his sharp features in shades of gold and shadow. When the house grew still, Alexander moved, silent, deliberate. Years of business wars had taught him patience, and patience was the weapon that always delivered the kill. He entered their bedroom. Elena's emerald gown lay draped across the bed, as if tossed carelessly in her rush. But Alexander's eyes weren't on the gown. They scanned the room, calculating. Something was off. He walked toward Elena's vanity, fingers brushing against her jewelry box, her perfume bottles, her carefully arranged makeup. Nothing unusual. Then he noticed it, the bottom drawer of her vanity desk, slightly ajar, almost unnoticeable. Alexander crouched, pulling it open. Beneath stacks of neatly folded scarves was a sleek, black smartphone, not Elena's usual phone. His chest tightened. A second phone. Hidden. He lifted it slowly, weighing it in his hand like a piece of evidence in a trial. The device was locked with a code. Elena had been cautious, meticulous. But Alexander's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. He had spent years cracking codes in billion-dollar negotiations. A 6-digit PIN would not outwit him. He placed the phone in his pocket just as the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Elena was returning. Quickly, he closed the drawer, straightened the room, and slipped back into the shadows near the balcony curtains. The door creaked open. Elena stepped inside, now wearing a silk robe, her expression tense, her movements stiff. She moved straight to the vanity, opened the bottom drawer, and froze. Her hand hovered over the scarves, panic flashing across her face. The phone was gone. Alexander's jaw clenched as he watched silently from the shadows. The fear in her eyes confirmed everything. She wasn't just guilty. She was hiding something far more dangerous than an affair. Looking for something? His deep voice sliced through the silence. Elena jumped, spinning toward him, her face pale. She forced a shaky smile, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Alexander, you startled me. He stepped into the light, pulling the hidden phone from his pocket. The screen glowed faintly in his hand, the forbidden object now in plain sight. Elena's knees almost buckled. Her mask of composure shattered, leaving only raw terror. Alexander's gaze pierced through her like a blade. Tell me, Elena, what are you hiding that's worth lying to your husband for? The silence between them stretched like a noose. Elena's trembling eyes were locked on the phone in Alexander's hand, her breath shallow, her lips parted as though words might save her. But Alexander wasn't interested in excuses. He wanted the truth, and he was prepared to tear through every layer of her lies to get it. He walked slowly toward his desk, the hidden phone glowing faintly in his grip. You thought you could hide this from me? His voice was low, steady, but each word carried the weight of thunder. Elena tried to mask her panic. She forced herself upright, crossing her arms as if to shield her shaking body. It's just a backup phone. Everyone has one. It's not what you think. Alexander chuckled, not out of amusement but disbelief. Elena, I pretended to be blind for 2 years and fooled you, Richard, and half the world. Do you really think a flimsy excuse will save you now? She fell silent, her eyes dropping to the floor. Alexander sat at his desk, placed the phone in front of him, and tapped the screen. The device demanded a 6-digit PIN. He studied Elena closely as his fingers hovered over the keypad. Tell me the code. Her lips tightened. I can't. Alexander leaned back, observing her. Then, without breaking eye contact, he typed 6 digits, her late mother's birthday. The phone unlocked with a soft chime. Elena's eyes widened, horror etched across her face. Predictable, Alexander murmured. He began scrolling. The screen was filled with encrypted messaging apps, anonymous numbers, and deleted call logs. But one chat thread caught his attention, labeled only with the letter M. Alexander opened it. Dozens of messages filled the screen, and as his eyes scanned them, the color drained from his face. Shipment confirmed. Funds will be transferred in 48 hours. The Kane Foundation accounts are vulnerable. Access granted once Elena delivers the codes. Remember, failure is not an option. Loose ends will be cut. Each message was darker than the last. This wasn't about love or even betrayal in marriage. This was conspiracy. His wife wasn't just unfaithful, she was entangled in something much deadlier. Alexander looked up, his eyes burning into her. Shipment? Accounts? Elena, who is M? Her voice cracked, desperation spilling through her words. Alexander, please, it's not what it looks like. I was forced into this. I didn't have a choice. Didn't have a choice? He thundered, slamming his fist against the desk. You had every choice. You chose deceit. You chose betrayal. And now I see this goes far beyond Richard. Elena broke into tears, collapsing to her knees. If I told you the truth, they would kill me. You don't understand, they're watching everything. Alexander leaned forward, his voice a sharp whisper. Then understand this, I am not the prey, Elena. I am the predator. And if they are watching, then let them watch me destroy them. The phone buzzed suddenly. Another message appeared from M. Time is running out. Deliver the codes tonight, or both you and Kane will be eliminated. Alexander's grip tightened around the device. His suspicion was now certainty. Elena's deadly secret wasn't about infidelity. It was about a powerful, unseen enemy that had just declared war on him. Alexander sat still for a long moment, the phone buzzing faintly in his hand. Elena remained on her knees, sobbing quietly, but he ignored her tears. His mind was already 3 steps ahead, piecing together the puzzle. Richard had been the distraction, but M was the mastermind. And now, thanks to Elena's carelessness, the door to the enemy's operation had been left wide open. He tapped the phone and reread the last message. Time is running out. Deliver the codes tonight, or both you and Kane will be eliminated. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. They want me eliminated? Then let's see how they handle a man who doesn't die easily. Elena crawled closer, her voice trembling. Alexander, please, you don't know these people. They're not like anyone you've faced before. They have reach, power, more than you can imagine. He bent down, lifting her chin with 2 fingers so her tear-streaked eyes met his. Elena, you married the wrong man if you think fear controls me. I built empires from nothing, defeated rivals who thought they were untouchable. If M thinks he's safe, then he's never faced Alexander Kane. He released her, straightened his suit, and pressed a button on his desk. The door opened and 2 guards stepped in. Take her to the East Wing. No visitors, no calls, no contact. She stays under lock and key until I say otherwise. Alexander, no. Please, she cried, struggling as the guards gently but firmly lifted her. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The heavy doors closed, leaving Alexander alone once again with the phone, and a plan forming in his mind. He opened the message thread with M and began typing. The codes will be ready. Location. Pause. Then the reply came. Old Marina Docks. Midnight. Come alone. If Kane suspects, we strike first. Alexander leaned back, a cold laugh rumbling in his chest. Perfect. You'll find me there, but not the way you expect. He pressed another button on his desk, summoning Samuel, his most trusted aide. Within minutes, a tall, broad-shouldered man entered, his expression sharp and alert. You called, sir? Alexander handed him the phone. Trace every signal. I want the location of M before midnight. And prepare the surveillance team. This meeting will be the spider's web, but they won't realize they're the flies. Samuel nodded. And Elena? Alexander's jaw tightened. Keep her alive. For now. She's the only link I have to M. But if she makes one wrong move... His voice trailed off, leaving the unspoken threat hanging heavy in the air. The aide bowed and exited swiftly, leaving Alexander alone once again. He poured himself a glass of brandy, the golden liquid glistening under the chandelier. Lifting it slowly, he whispered to himself. They thought Kane was blind. But I see everything now. As the clock ticked toward midnight, the game had shifted. Elena had betrayed him. Richard had been exposed. But the real battle was only beginning. One that would pit Alexander Kane against the faceless M in a deadly war of power, money, and secrets. And this time, Alexander wasn't just defending himself. He was hunting. The marina docks stretched out under the Lagos moonlight, silent except for the whisper of waves slapping against rusting steel hulls. Abandoned containers cast long shadows, their surfaces glowing faintly under the scattered floodlights. Midnight air carried the sharp scent of saltwater and oil, mixing with an unease that seemed to hang over the place. Alexander Kane stepped out of his black bulletproof SUV, his polished shoes clicking softly against the concrete. His tinted glasses reflected the moon, hiding the fire in his eyes. In one hand he carried nothing but a slim cane, the same cane he had used to play the part of a blind man. But tonight it was more than a prop, it was a weapon. Unseen to the naked eye, his men were already positioned, sharpshooters hidden in shadows, drones circling high above, and Samuel coordinating every move from a control van parked 2 blocks away. From the far end of the dock, headlights flared. A convoy of 3 black SUVs rolled in, engines growling low. The vehicles stopped, and out stepped 6 men in tailored suits, each armed but pretending otherwise. In the middle, a taller man in a navy blue coat moved with the kind of arrogance only power could buy. His face was partially hidden by the brim of a cap. Alexander tilted his head slightly, voice steady and commanding. So, you must be M. The man in the coat gave a slow smile but didn't remove the cap. You're sharper than your wife said. I almost believed the blind act myself. Alexander's lips twitched, his calm cracking into a dangerous grin. Blind men don't come to midnight meetings alone. At his signal, 2 of the suited men shifted uneasily, reaching for their weapons. In an instant, red laser dots appeared on their chests from the shadows above. They froze. M chuckled, raising his hands slightly. So, the lion has claws. But Alexander, lions can also be hunted. The words hung heavy in the air. Behind M, more men spilled from the SUVs, at least a dozen of them. They fanned out in a wide semicircle, boxing Alexander in. Samuel's voice crackled in Alexander's earpiece. Sir, we count 15 hostiles, all armed. Orders. Alexander tightened his grip on the cane, tapping it once against the ground. Orders? Simple. Let's remind them who owns this city. The docks exploded into chaos. Gunfire rattled through the night, sparks flying as bullets ricocheted off containers. Alexander moved like a phantom, using the cane to disarm one attacker, slamming its steel tip into the man's throat before spinning to strike another. Overhead, snipers picked off enemies one by one, each shot echoing like thunder. Through it all, M didn't move. He stood calm, watching Alexander cut through his men with terrifying precision. Finally, as the last body dropped, M removed his cap. Alexander froze. The face beneath the brim wasn't what he expected. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone he knew. Someone from his past. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The sound of waves crashing against the docks faded, The smell of gunpowder still hung in the air, but all Alexander could see was the face before him. The man known only as M slowly lifted his chin, the brim of his cap falling back to reveal sharp, familiar features. The years had added lines of experience and shadows of bitterness, but Alexander recognized him instantly. "Emmanuel?" Alexander's voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of thunder. The man smirked, his eyes cold and calculating. "You still remember?" I was beginning to think the mighty Alexander Kane had forgotten the brother he left behind. Brother. The word struck like a knife. Not a brother by blood but by bond. Emmanuel had once been his closest ally, a man who had fought beside him when Alexander was still building his empire. They had started from the same streets, dreaming of power, wealth, and respect. But somewhere along the way, Emmanuel had disappeared, leaving only whispers of betrayal in his wake. Alexander's jaw tightened, his hand curling around the steel cane. "I didn't leave you. You chose to vanish. You chose greed over loyalty." Emmanuel's laugh echoed across the empty dock. "Greed? No, Alexander. I chose survival. You had everything, the money, the power, the influence. And you wanted me to play the shadow, your silent guard dog. I realized then that the only way to shine was to step out of your light." The bitterness in his tone was sharp enough to cut. Behind him, the few surviving gunmen shifted uncomfortably, waiting for orders. Alexander shook his head slowly, his expression unreadable behind the tinted glasses. "You don't understand, Emmanuel. I trusted you more than anyone. If you had stayed, this empire could have been ours." Emmanuel's smile twisted into something darker. "Ours? No, brother. You never share. That's why your wife came to me." The words landed like a hammer. Alexander's heartbeat quickened, but his face remained composed. "Elena. Of course. She had always known about Emmanuel, though she had pretended otherwise. If she had been passing secrets to him, then every move, every weakness Alexander had allowed himself to show inside his home, Emmanuel knew. Alexander's silence only emboldened Emmanuel. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper. "She told me everything. Your plans, your blind act, even your suspicions about Richard. You see, brother, while you were playing blind in your mansion, I was watching through her eyes." A storm raged inside Alexander, but outwardly he remained calm. That was his strength, control. Slowly, he tapped his cane against the ground, the metallic thud echoing. His men in the shadows stiffened, awaiting his next signal. Finally, Alexander spoke, his voice icy. "So this was never about power alone. This was personal." Emmanuel's smile widened. "Personal? Oh, Alexander, this is only the beginning. You built your empire on loyalty, but now your own house is crumbling. And I'll be there to burn the ashes." The words hung in the air like poison. The night had revealed a deeper betrayal, one not just of power but of family, trust, and blood-forged bonds. For the first time in years, Alexander Kane felt the sting of true vulnerability. Alexander's cane tapped once more against the dock, sharp and deliberate, as if he were setting the rhythm of the night itself. His men stiffened, their weapons ready, but he raised a hand subtly, commanding restraint. "Not yet." This was no moment for bullets, it was a battle of minds. Emmanuel, emboldened by his revelation, smirked. "You don't look surprised. But then again, you've always hidden behind that mask of calm. Tell me, Alexander, does nothing break you?" Alexander tilted his head slightly, the faintest smile curving his lips. "Only fools believe calmness means weakness. A lion doesn't roar at every insect in the grass." The words cut deeper than Emmanuel expected. He flinched, his smirk faltering before quickly returning. But Alexander had seen it, that flicker of insecurity. "Let me ask you something, Emmanuel," Alexander continued smoothly, his voice low, controlled, lethal. "If Elena truly gave you everything, if you had every piece of my empire in your hands, then why are you standing here, needing me to acknowledge you?" Silence followed. The surviving guards exchanged uneasy glances. Emmanuel's jaw clenched. "Because respect matters. You were always the one they looked up to. The one they called a king. I refuse to live in your shadow again." Alexander leaned forward slightly, his tinted glasses glinting under the golden dock lights. "Then you've already lost. Kings don't beg for crowns. They take them. And you," he gestured with a slight flick of his hand, "are still waiting for mine." The truth of it hit Emmanuel hard. His bitterness, his betrayal, his carefully crafted rebellion, all of it still orbited Alexander. He was the moon pretending to be the sun. Alexander let the silence stretch before speaking again, this time with venom-laced precision. And Elena, tell me, Emmanuel, do you think she came to you out of loyalty? Or was she simply using you as another pawn, another escape? Women like Elena are storms, destructive, unpredictable, never loyal to one shore. Did you really believe you were different? Emmanuel's nostrils flared. He stepped closer, his voice rough with suppressed rage. Careful, Alexander. I'm not one of your lackeys to be lectured. But Alexander chuckled, deep and steady, shaking his head slowly. No, you're worse. You're a man who doesn't realize he's already dancing to my tune. The doc fell silent again. Alexander's calmness wasn't arrogance, it was dominance. Every word, every gesture reminded Emmanuel that no matter what secrets he had stolen, no matter what alliances he had formed, he was still playing on Alexander Kane's chessboard. Finally, Alexander rose to his full height, adjusting his suit jacket with quiet authority. I don't need to kill you tonight, Emmanuel. I just need you to keep talking. Because every word you speak digs you deeper into the grave I've already prepared. Emmanuel's eyes narrowed, fury and fear warring in them. The chessboard had turned. And once again Alexander Kane was in control. The sound of heels clicking against the wooden dock cut through the heavy silence. Every head turned. Out of the shadows emerged Elena Kane, her emerald gown glimmering under the dock lights, her gold jewelry catching faint reflections of the Lagos skyline. Her face was flawless as ever, but her eyes, sharp, calculating, dangerous, betrayed the storm she carried within. Alexander didn't move. Emmanuel's smirk returned, but it was strained, trembling under the weight of uncertainty. Elena, Alexander's voice was calm, steady. You finally decided to show yourself. She tilted her head, studying him. You always were difficult to surprise, Alexander. Even when pretending to be blind. The words carried venom but also respect. She stopped between the two men, her posture regal, her silence more dangerous than any weapon. Emmanuel stepped forward quickly, seizing the moment. Tell him, Elena. Tell him you chose me because his time is over. He's a relic clinging to power, but together we can rebuild everything he pretends to control. Elena's eyes flicked toward Emmanuel. Her lips curved into a faint smile, but it was cold. And yet, here you are, still needing me to speak for you. The remark hit Emmanuel like a slap. His jaw tightened and he took a half step back, fists clenched. Alexander finally stood, adjusting his jacket as his cane tapped once against the dock. You see, Emmanuel, you mistake Elena for a prize. But she has never belonged to anyone, not me and certainly not you. Elena's gaze shifted to Alexander, and for the briefest moment, her mask slipped. A flicker of something, admiration, nostalgia, regret, crossed her eyes before hardening again. You still think you know me, she whispered. But the truth is neither of you do. You underestimate what a woman can do when she's tired of being used as a pawn. The words carried a chilling weight. Even Alexander's men stiffened. Then enlighten us, Alexander said, voice still calm but sharper now. Whose side are you really on, Elena? Because tonight, there will be no shadows to hide in. Elena looked between the two men. Emmanuel's desperation was palpable, his shoulders tense, sweat glistening at his temples. Alexander stood in stark contrast, calm, unshaken, untouchable, his silence more commanding than any threat. Finally, Elena took a slow step back, placing herself deliberately at the center. Her voice was steady, her eyes glimmering with dangerous resolve. I'm not here to choose between you. I'm here to take everything for myself. The dock erupted into chaos. Gasps, movement, guards exchanging confused glances. Emmanuel's face twisted in disbelief, his lips parting but no words coming out. Alexander's faint smile returned as if he had expected this all along. He didn't flinch. Finally, Elena, you've stopped pretending. For the first time, Emmanuel realized he wasn't facing Alexander Kane alone. He was facing a storm that even Alexander had once failed to contain. And now, Elena was claiming the throne for herself. The night air thickened as Elena's words echoed across the dock. I'm here to take everything for myself. It wasn't just a declaration, it was a shot fired and its ripples were immediate. Emmanuel staggered back as though struck, his face twisted in rage and confusion. Alexander remained calm, but his men glanced at him nervously, waiting for a signal. Elena lifted her chin, her confidence towering over both men. 4 years I watched you, Alexander, the great billionaire Kane. You built an empire from nothing, but you built it with chains. Chains on me. Chains on everyone around you. You call it loyalty, I call it captivity. Her words cut sharp, designed not only to wound but to sway. The guards shifted uneasily, and even Emmanuel's men exchanged glances. Alexander caught the subtle shift. Elena wasn't just speaking, she was recruiting. Emmanuel finally found his voice. "Don't you dare turn this into your stage, Elena. You promised me we would destroy him together. You." She turned on him swiftly, her eyes blazing. "I promised nothing, Emmanuel. You were useful, that's all. But like every pawn, your time has passed." The insult shattered him. Emmanuel lunged forward, but two of Alexander's guards shoved him back. Alexander raised his hand, halting the chaos. His eyes never left Elena. "You've always loved drama," Alexander said quietly, his voice carrying across the dock with effortless authority. "But tell me, Elena, what exactly do you think you're going to do? Stand here between two men with armies and crown yourself queen?" Elena smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of her lips. "Not crown myself, Alexander. I already did." With a snap of her fingers, footsteps thundered from the shadows. From behind the shipping containers and out of waiting cars, a dozen armed men in sleek suits appeared, rifles glinting under the dock lights. They weren't Emmanuel's. They weren't Alexander's. They were hers. Gasps erupted. Emmanuel's face fell in shock. Alexander's men instinctively reached for their weapons, but Alexander lifted a hand again, stopping them. His calm expression remained, but his mind raced. Elena had played her hand brilliantly. She hadn't come unarmed or desperate. She had come prepared, waiting for both men to weaken each other before revealing her own power. Emmanuel shouted, spittle flying. "You planned this the whole time? You used me." "Just like Alexander used me," Elena cut in sharply. "The difference is I learned from both of you." The tension was unbearable. Emmanuel was cornered, betrayed by the very woman he thought was his ally. Alexander, however, stood tall, his glass of brandy still steady in his hand. He studied Elena with eyes that betrayed neither fear nor anger, only a deep, calculating respect. "You think you've cornered me," Alexander finally said, his voice low and deliberate. "But queens, Elena. Queens are always the first to fall when the board tilts." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Because Alexander Kane wasn't a man who needed an army. He was the storm. The dock trembled with tension. Elena stood tall at the center, her emerald gown flowing in the salty breeze, her newly revealed army forming a perfect circle around Alexander and Emmanuel. Guns were raised, shadows stretched under the harsh dock lights, and the Lagos skyline glittered behind them like a silent witness. Alexander, calm as ever, swirled the last of his brandy in his glass and took a slow sip. He set it down on a nearby crate, his tinted glasses glinting under the golden chandelier glow spilling from the yacht. Then he spoke, his voice steady but commanding enough to cut through the chaos. "Elena Kane. My wife. The woman I once trusted more than my own blood." He let the words hang in the air. "You think you've won. But let me ask you, why is it that every time you plan to destroy me, you end up standing in my light instead?" Elena's jaw tightened. She gestured sharply to her men. "Disarm him. Now." But Alexander lifted a hand, and before her guards could move, half of them froze. Confusion rippled through the ranks. Then, to everyone's shock, 5 of her armed men lowered their rifles and stepped back. Alexander allowed a faint smile. "You're clever, Elena. But did you really believe I wouldn't see this coming? Loyalty is not bought with promises or seduction. Loyalty is earned. And I've been earning it for decades." Gasps broke out as more of Elena's supposed soldiers shifted uneasily, unsure where their true allegiance lay. Emmanuel, bruised and desperate, laughed bitterly. "You both deserve each other, snakes circling the same throne." Elena's voice cracked with fury. "You traitors," she screamed at her own men. "Do you have any idea what I sacrificed for you?" Alexander stepped forward, his presence towering. "Sacrifice." His tone dripped with contempt. "You call betrayal a sacrifice? You betrayed your vows, your allies, even yourself. And now you dare to think you can build an empire on lies." Elena's hand trembled, but she pulled a small pistol from her gown, aiming it straight at Alexander's chest. The dock went still. Her voice wavered, but her words were sharp. "I won't let you win. Not again. Not ever." Alexander didn't flinch. He took one slow step closer. Then another. His voice softened, but every syllable carried fire. "Then pull the trigger, Elena. But remember, even if you kill me, you'll never escape my shadow. Because deep down, you know what you fear most, is becoming me." The silence was suffocating. Elena's finger hovered on the trigger. Sweat rolled down her temple. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed frozen. And then, a gunshot split the night. But it wasn't Elena who fired. Her pistol clattered to the ground and she staggered back, clutching her shoulder, blood soaking her gown. Behind her, one of her own men lowered his smoking gun, eyes wide with conflict. Elena's knees buckled, her strength fading as the circle of power she had built collapsed around her. Alexander bent down slowly, picking up her fallen pistol. His voice was calm, almost pitying. Queens don't fall because they are weak, Elena. They fall because they forget who built the throne beneath them. As she was dragged away, her army fractured and Emmanuel was left broken. Alexander turned back to the water, his glassy reflection staring back. He hadn't just survived. He had reminded the world why he could never be dethroned. But deep inside, one thought lingered like a shadow. If Elena dared this much, who else was still waiting in the dark? And with that chilling thought, the board reset once again, paving the way for a war far bigger than betrayal. If you've come this far, please click on the subscribe button to get notified when new stories are published.